Hi guys and gals, today we're going to talk about the cool down. I'm going to give you a few stretches that you can do at the end of your exercises. These stretches are going to be static stretches, so do not do them before training. It's going to make you weak and it can cause injuries. Now, it's a long topic whether you should do static stretches before training or after training, but it's not the topic for today. I'm just going to tell you the stretches, and for now, just make sure you do them at the end of your exercise, not the beginning of your exercise. And I'm gonna also go through the details, so which muscles are gonna be stretched in these stretches. Make sure you do not push it too much. So a little bit of tension is alright when you're stretching a muscle, but if that muscle is really tight, do not try to stretch it too much. Make sure you increase the flexibility gradually, and make sure you do them at the end of the exercise each time you're finishing your routine. So if you do them each time, you're gonna increase your flexibility as long as you do not overdo it. That can cause injury. So of course you can choose a few of them based on the training that you have each session. So for example, if you want to just stretch the leg, for example, if you are just training leg one day, it's alright, but still it's beneficial to stretch the entire body, especially to release the stress and have a good night's sleep. You can also do them in your recovery days as well. So even if you're not training, doing these is gonna be beneficial. So without further ado, the first stretch is gonna be like this. You're gonna put the knees out, the legs go wide, you're gonna sit back, so you're gonna go all the way back, and of course I'm gonna show it from the side as well, and you're gonna try to reach forward. Try to bring the chest down. Make sure you keep your hip on the ground. So again, legs out, you push your hip down, chest down. Now the muscles that are getting stretched in this stretch are mainly your lower back, your glutes and your leg abductors, and also you're gonna feel a little bit of a stretching on your tibialis anterior if you push your toes down like this. But if you hold it like this, you're not gonna feel a stretch here. You're gonna feel a little bit of a stretch on your calf. Also, you're gonna feel the stretch on your chest as well. The pectoralis major, the pectoralis minor, all the two main muscles in this area when you go up, and also your lats are going to be a little bit stretched as well. Your ab is going to be a little bit stretched as well. But if you've got these issues, do not do this exercise if it's painful, because it can cause problems. Now, as mentioned, you're going to stretch the lower back and the abs. The reason is when you go into this position, you're going into the posterior tilt, so the lower back is going to be stretched. At the same time, because the chest comes up, you're also going to get a stretch in your abs as well, but it's not going to be that much. So your rectus abdominis is going to be a stretch, but it's not going to be to that extent, but still it's a good stretch. From this stretch, we're going to go to another stretch. The legs are going to be in the same position. This time you come up, put your hands on the top of your hip, bring the elbows in, so bring them back, bring the shoulder back, push the chest forward, push the ab forward, push the hip forward as well. So this. Again, showing from the front, legs out. Make sure the elbow is not out. bring it in. If it's really hard to bring the elbow in, go a little bit lower. So the higher you bring your hands, the harder it's going to be to bring the elbow in. So bring it a little bit lower. The muscles that are going to be stretched in this stretch are mainly your chest, because you're bringing the elbow back. Your tricep is getting a little bit stretched. Your front delt is getting a little bit stretched. Your core muscles in the front, so specifically the rectus abdominis, the obliques are going to be a little bit stretched. The hip flexors are going to be stretched. And there are two muscles in your spine that go all the way to the leg. The main hip flexors. Anyway, they're also called the iliopsoas. Anyway, they're going to be stretched. And also the quads are going to be stretched as well, because you go into this position. So again, a lot of muscles are getting a good stretch. From this stretch, we're gonna bring one leg forward, this leg back, push the hip forward and rotate. Again, from the front, one leg forward, one leg back, push the hip forward and rotate. The muscles that are going to be stretched, first the side that's on the back. As you can see, again the hip flexors are getting stretched, the quad is getting a good stretch, the tibialis anterior here is getting stretched if the toe is like that, but if you bring it up, it's going to be the calf that's getting the stretch. It's not going to be that much on the calf, but still it's a little bit getting a stretch, and your ab is getting a stretch as well. But again, the side that you have the leg back is going to be more stretched. This side is not going to be that much because you're into this anterior tilt on this side, but this side is not that much tilted. So a little bit higher, as you can see, I am rotating, so my QL is getting a good stretch, my lat is getting a good stretch on this side, and also when you come up the rear delt, the muscles on my scapula like the infraspinatus and also a little bit of the traps are getting a good stretch. My long head of the tricep is getting a good stretch, and the deeper muscles on my back like the transversus spinalis on the side that I'm rotating is getting a good stretch. The paraspinals are getting a good stretch. My thoracolumbar fascia is getting a good stretch, and a lot of muscles basically on the side that I rotate. But on this side, I'm not gonna get that much stretch aside from, again, my chest. As you can see, because my arm is rotating, my chest is getting a little bit of a stretch, my bicep is getting a little bit of a stretch, but it's not gonna be that much. So again, the side that you put the leg back and rotate is gonna get a good stretch. If you want to stretch the hip flexors more, instead of just rotating, bring the arms up and go to the side and then rotate. This way the lats are going to get a good stretch as well, and the hip flexors, by hip flexors I mean the two main hip flexors as mentioned are going to get the good stretch, and of course you're going to do it for both sides. From this stretch we're going to come down on the ground. One leg is going to be forward, one leg is going to be rotated and go all the way back. We're gonna bring the elbow up from one side. So it's better to bring from the opposite side of the leg that's straight. So if this is a straight, bring the elbow from the other side up and try to lean a little bit towards this leg. If you have the flexibility, try to keep the toes up. But if it's really hard, or for example for me it's really hard, bring the toes to the side and again try to lean towards this leg while the elbow is up. So as you can see, because I have a little bit of tightness on my lower back and my hamstring, I struggle to some extent, but try to come as low as you can. Again, do not force it if you don't have the flexibility. Again, from the side, elbow up, lean. You should come a little bit more, but again, because of the tightness in my hamstring, I cannot do that. The muscles that I'm getting stretched, the tricep, as you can see, the lat, because you're coming to one side, so the lat is getting a good stretch as well. The rear delt, the infraspinatus, and the small muscles in this area on your scapula are getting a good stretch as well. Again, the paraspinals on your back, the transversus spinalis are getting a good stretch. The QL is getting a good stretch. Your obliques are getting a good stretch. The rectus abdominis is getting a little bit stretch, but it's not that much because you're flexing. But still, because you're a little bit bending, it's getting a little bit of a stretch. Aside from that, as you can see, this is back, this is forward. This leg, the hamstring is getting a great stretch. The glutes on both sides are getting a good stretch, although this side is not too much, but this side, the glutes are getting a good stretch. On this side, the sartorius is getting a little bit stretched. Not too much, but a little bit stretched. The quadriceps are getting a good stretch. The adductors are getting a good stretch as well. And on this side, if I bring the toe up, so in this position, the calf is getting a good stretch. And on this side, if the toe is down, again, the tibialis anterior is getting a good stretch. And as you can see, the lower back is gonna get a stretch as well when I come forward. So again, this is a good stretch. Of course, you're gonna do it for both sides. Try to go a little bit wide. So do not keep it like this. Go wide. So adductors are getting a great stretch as well. Also, the adductors are gonna be a stretch in the two stretches as well. So as you remember, the legs were out and we were doing these two stretches, so the adductors were getting a good stretch. And also on the next exercise, the next stretch that I showed you, which was this, and I said do it for both sides, the abductors or the glutes were getting a good stretch. You're gonna push the hip back while you keep the arch in your lower back. So make sure it's not curved, keep the arch, so keep that anterior tilt in your hip, push the hip back, bring this leg forward and put it on the plate, and make sure this is straight, this is bent. So we're not doing anything on this leg, we're just stretching this leg, the hamstring and the calf, and make sure you push your hip as back as you can and try to bring your toes up as well. Now, the higher the plate is, the more you're gonna bring your toes back and the more stretch on the calf you get, but still, this is a good place. You can also do it on air, but it's not gonna be that much stretch on the calf. If you have something underneath your toes, it's gonna be a better stretch. If your calf was still tight, try to do this stretch. I've talked about it before as well. So make sure the toes are pointed forward, the heel on the ground, and also do not bend the knee. Go all the way up. Again from the front. This is straight, the heel on the ground, toes forward, and try to come forward as much as those three criteria are in place. So make sure the heel doesn't come up, the knee doesn't get bent, and also the toes don't go up. If everything is in place, try to come forward as much as you can. Bring the elbow in, push the thumb out, and just hold it. As you can see, the side delt is getting a good stretch. so just push it out. Of course, the rear delt is getting a stretch as well, but the side delt is getting a stretch as well. And at last, if you want to stretch the bicep and the brachialis, brachioradialis in this area, just find a wall and put your palm on the wall and try to rotate a little bit out as well. It's not just stretching the bicep and the brachialis and brachioradialis, it's also stretching the forearm as well. And although for stretching the bicep, you need to bring the arm back as well or extend the shoulder as well, but still this is a good stretch as well. But if it was still tight, just find some place to bring the hand back and feel the stretch on the bicep, but do not overdo it because that can cause problems in your shoulder. Also, this was a good stretch for the chest as well. As you saw, the hand was on the wall and I was rotating, so the pectoralis major was getting a good stretch as well.